The anime begins by telling us that 15 years have passed since the war between humans and demons began, because the humans went through a portal to reach their world. However, the demons, taking advantage of the opportunity that they were attacked, occupied one of their territories, causing chaos and destruction in the icy southern lands. But during this chaotic situation, a hero arose, who along with his 3 companions undertook a journey to subdue the demons, which brought hope to the people. Although to everyone's surprise, this hero became impatient due to his slow progress through the world of demons and separated from his companions to go to face the Demon King alone. Then we can see our protagonist arrive at the doors of the castle, and after entering, he meets the Demon King, to whom assures that the long war between their races will end on this day before attacking him wielding his sword. But before managing to hurt him, he discovers that in reality the Demon King is a beautiful young woman who presents herself to him as the 43rd Demon King, known as Ruby's Eyes. The protagonist, in shock, asks her if she really is the Demon King, to which Ruby's Eyes shows him the emblem that she has between her, causing the hero to become very nervous. Then, remembering his mission, the protagonist confesses that he is not. It matters to him that she is a very voluptuous woman, because his duty is to finish off the Demon King for the good of all. She slowly approaches him and after dodging his attempt to hit, greets him kindly again and then confesses that she has been waiting for him, anxious for a long time, that she wanted to talk to him about how they can both work together for the first time. The hero, upon hearing her, he asks her what she is talking about, and she, with her arms extended in a sign of peace, asks him to be hers. But he refuses, because of his blame. Many nations have been destroyed among them. Forest Nation, which was very beautiful and prosperous until the demons arrive. She responds that it is not their fault, that humans cut down the trees indiscriminately to make a lot of charcoal, which eventually brought them great contamination. The surprised man questions that it was actually the demons who possessed the minister of the Tin Nation, to which Ruby assures him that none of that was her fault, since human politicians generally tend to evade responsibility for their mistakes. Blaming the demons, the protagonist, upon listening to her, asks her, so what about the war against the southern nations? Because he himself has seen demons killing hundreds of people. Ruby's Eyes tell him that they did it, because many demons were also killed at the hands of humans, which by hearing this he thinks is good, because they are evil. But she, far from getting angry, while confessing that she finds him attractive, shows him a scroll where he has an economic analysis. However, she quickly realizes that the hero has no idea about economics because of that reason. First of all, he tries to explain what it means, and he also reveals that he wants to talk about the positive points of the war, to which the very angry man replies that there is nothing positive, but the Demon King shows him the data he has collected, and that it allows the hero to discover that humans consider war as something positive. Finally, Ruby's Eyes tells him that the war changed both humans and demons. He, for his part, very upset, tells her that this does not justify that he can perpetrate war or much less start another one, although now he understands that she did not do it out of self-interest, so he offers his company in exchange for his surrender. On hearing this, she assures him that they cannot end the war at this moment. Meanwhile, in the human kingdom, King of the Southern Lands talks to his son who is very worried, as he wants to end the war against humans, and confesses that since they have infertile lands, maintaining the war is the only way they have for the nations to send them a large amount of money, and then asks him to remember how before the war began, the entire nation was between life and death. On the other hand, Ruby's Eyes explain this same situation to the protagonist, who finally realizes that the nations of the South take advantage of the war to receive money that allows them to buy food. Then the Demon King took the protagonist to her home to talk about what the nations of the center receive, in exchange for sending money to the nations of the South. She informs him that they send money in exchange for protection, so that the war does not extend to their lands. Then, for the hero's surprise, she gives him a lamp that projects the scenarios engraved in his heart, which means that they can see his memories. And while they observe a great party attended by the hero, the Demon King tells him that all this would not be possible if war did not exist, because many would be unemployed, But he also tells him that many others would be dead, although he quickly teaches him that war is not a solution to all problems, because in some places people continue to die of hunger, as agricultural production has not grown significantly. After listening to everything she had to say, protagonist cannot believe her words, which she assures him is the truth, because it is very likely that the human kings also know it. Therefore, if the war ended today, regardless of whether they win or lose, the humans would be ruined, while if the demons win, they will use the humans as slaves. He tells her that he would never allow it, and she assures him that if the humans win, they will do the same. But the Demon King, resigned to the fact that the hero does not change his mind, uses the magic lamp to take them to a boat that travels along a river. She confesses that everything she sees around her, she would like to know further away without a war in the way. For this reason, she begs him to be hers, so that his light and his sword become his eyes. To which he responds again that no, causing her to try to bargain their terms. The protagonist tells her that there will be no negotiation, because there is no way to agree to that, and she responds that there is a way, which involves offering half of her world, as the ancient records indicate. But he confesses that no hero would be so stupid as to accept that, to which she, accepting his reflection, indicates that he is correct, because they would continue in the same situation. However, there is something that she can offer him completely, and it is herself, in exchange for him also giving himself completely to her. The hero becomes very nervous when listening to her. Although Ruby's eyes at Baya, perceiving that he seems more willing to negotiate, she tells him about the advantages he would have by accepting his proposal. Finally, after an extensive conversation about all the sacrifices they must make, which even involve getting their hands dirty with blood, they both seal their alliance pact with a hug. In the next scene, we see that the protagonist, along with Ruby's eyes, made a trip to a small, newly established village, with the intention of hiding their identities and experimenting with their ideas. There they were received by the eldest servant, who is a subject of the Demon King, who was in charge of having a house ready for when they arrived. And after settling in said house, Ruby's eyes tell the protagonist that the eldest servant is part of her clan, where each of them specializes in a single task as far as she was capable. Seeing her sparked interest in following the path of the servants, and because of that, they have been together since they were children. And even once the eldest servant was the leader of the army, and suddenly she interrupts them to reveal to the protagonist that her task is to fulfill any need that his mistress has, then tells them both that she was already in charge of introducing them to the village chief and other important people. So she tells them that the Demon King was introduced as a daughter of a renowned scholar of divinity in the sacred capital, who came to this place to investigate and teach about agricultural techniques. The next day, we see Ruby's eyes teaching the protagonist about how they should cultivate the land of the village with wheat so that the earth does not deteriorate. She tells him that they are going to cultivate in 3 stages: a winter garden, a summer garden, and another that rests during the year, so that in the future it will be possible to increase the rotation to 4 stages. Then, using his magic lamp, she shows him what the 4 stages would look like, carried out, and also tells him that their plan is to do this over a period of 4 years. Since in the summers they will feed the cattle with clover so that they produce manure, which implies that the land will improve, and in the winters they will feed them with turnips so that they can continue with their work. The surprised hero confesses her that this is a fantastic idea to ensure that the crops work all year round, to which she tells him that in addition to that, they will ensure an abundant harvest. However, she warns him that when they manage to carry out all their plans, they must prepare so that these lands will become a point of conflict, because people will fight over them. But as they walk, he tells them that in any case they have to try to increase the amount of food they produce in order to eliminate the hunger, which is the most important thing. Later we see that after talking to the village leader, the protagonist came out a little frustrated because he was very stubborn. Ruby's eyes, on the other hand, believes that. So first they have to provide education so that they can understand what things are important, or else they will not be able to advance later during nation. At night, the protagonist and Ruby's eyes share a warm moment in front of the heat of the flames, where she confesses to the protagonist that she wants to negotiate something, although she does not want him to misunderstand her. Without understanding what she needs, he asks her what is it. Very embarrassed by the situation, she tells him that if he wants, he can rest in her legs. But when she thought that the hero would refuse, she was surprised to see that he quickly agreed to comply with her request, and that he also assures her that he now belongs to her, so she can do whatever she wants with him. Ruby's eyes taking advantage of the situation, she begins to pat his hair, and then, trusting in his words that she can do whatever she wants with him, she tries to kiss him. But before achieving this, they are interrupted by a loud noise in the stable, which causes both of them quickly go to check. What happened when they arrived? They found two very scared girls, which left them very confused. Although suddenly the older servant approached them to tell them that they are runaway slaves, she reveals to them that, in this area, the system is somewhat different from the other towns, to which the very angry protagonist tells him that there are no longer slaves anywhere, because it is something unforgivable. But Ruby's eyes tells him that perhaps her servant is wrong, because, in reality, they must be servants, which is very different to be a slave because they are allowed to have possessions, home, and tools. However, like slaves, they are not free to change their occupation or move to another place, which means that they generally serve as labor for the nobility. Then asks to the older servant how they treated these cases during this time, and she tells her that they only reported them so that they would come and look for them. That's why she suggests doing the same. The protagonist, when sees the situation, thinks that she is being too cruel. Although then, he was surprised when he heard that Ruby's eyes agrees with her decision. But before doing so, the Demon King asked his servant to prepare a hot bath for them and make them put on some more appropriate clothes. The scene changes, and we see how the girls eat desperately before the attentive look of the protagonist and the Demon King. They thank them for helping them, since they also gave them very elegant clothes, to which the protagonist tells them not to worry, because those are only clothes left by the people who previously lived in that place. But suddenly the oldest of the girls, apologizing for their daring, begs them not to report them the next day and to give them a little more time. Upon hearing her, the older servant refuses, which caused the little girl to tell her that she is evil because they tried so hard to run away because they only want to go to the capital so they can live together there. She tells her that it's a fantastic fantasy story. Although she confesses that if they manage to achieve it, she can say that they made an effort, but now they are just two girls who took advantage of the kindness of others and put at risk the position of those who gave them a place to spend the night. Finally, he tells them that they must apologize, causing the older girl to apologize to both the protagonist and Ruby's eyes for causing so much trouble. But then, she begs the older maid who teaches them how to be more decent people, to which she, trusting that she can help them, asks the Demon King for permission to hire some maids. Ruby's eyes, with a big smile, accepted his proposal and asked him to please. Trained well, which caused great happiness in the girls. Several days later, we can see that Ruby's eyes began to teach classes for a small group of people on how they should handle the issue of war and on different basic premises of economics. But later, when she meets with the hero, she confesses that dealing with human children is exhausting and regrets having mentioned that she had to educate them. Seeing that his partner is a little frustrated, he tells her that he will accompany her to her next class, even if it is at home of the village chief. Then we move 3 months to the future, where the protagonist and the Demon King proudly observe the fruit of their work in the orchards, thanks to their experiments, which gave them a good reputation in the village. Later, they both moved to around another city in the Lake Nation to visit the convent that supervises the religious community of the area. During the way there, Ruby's eyes consults the protagonist if he worships the Holy Spirit of light like the rest of the humans throughout. He answers that strictly no, but when he is fighting, she feels him close as if they were friends. Although he confesses that he considers him a coward for not being able to reject what they ask of him. She breathes a sigh of relief when she hears it and reveals that she would have felt bad if he was a devout believer in the saint. The hero assures her that she should not worry because in reality what draws his attention the most is the church, because there the people of the city learn to read and write, which is why some aristocrats who want to do research give more importance to the church than to King Ruby Eyes. She responds that it is something logical, because in the human world, both education and science are almost completely under the control of the church. And that is why, a little embarrassed, she confesses that she wished she could take advantage of her power as an organization. In the next scene, we see that the young people entrust an important object to a nun, so that she can speak with the director of the convent who was observing them from the shadows. And after a brief moment, the director appears before them. The demon tells him that she is an agricultural researcher from the southern lands known as the Crimson Scholar. The protagonist, for his part, tells her that he is the assistant of the Crimson Scholar, whom they know as the White Swordsman. But to his surprise, the director did not say anything, a single word, until he suddenly scolds the protagonist for calling himself the White Swordsman when in reality he is the hero. He is amazed to see that the director is an old companion whom he knows as the female knight, who asks him where he has been wandering all along, because he's been missing for a year. She reminds her that the four of them were supposed to continue together until they defeat the Demon King. The hero responds that he thought it was not fair to involve them in his problems, to which she tearfully tells him, a strong blow to the face because he has no idea how much she has been worried about him. So he decides to apologize, although she's not very interested, because she keeps scolding him for appearing in this place accompanied by a beautiful woman. Ruby's Eyes, upon hearing her, quickly tells her that she will be in charge of explaining everything that happened. Then, after inventing a story about how the hero confronted the Demon King, she reveals that she found him badly injured after a group of demons attacked him. So for a while, she was in charge of healing his wounds, and as a thank you, the hero decided to serve as her guardian, the female knight. Upon hearing this, she apologizes to the protagonist for having reacted so badly. Later, the hero asks her friend how she ended up being the director from the convent, and she tells him that after his disappearance, she received a letter saying that they would give her a reward for having accompanied the hero during his trip. Although since she did not want to use it to progress in life, she decided to return to the convent, where she was titled as knight. The protagonist said that it was great, and then asks her what happened to his other colleagues. She tells him that the old pervert joined the intelligence service of a southern nation after accepting the reward money. And on the other hand, the magician woman decided to continue on her own towards the world of demons because she tried to look for him. When he hears her, he is surprised and apologizes to her because he feels responsible for his friend having made that decision. Although he reminds her that they both know that the magician woman will not be easily defeated in the end, he tells her that he has not come to talk about them because he is in that place, accompanying the scholar, because they need to ask for help from her convent. The Demon King quickly shows him a special plant called Solanum tuberosum, which grows underground, and suddenly she smells food scent. For that reason, she tells the director that the food she ordered to be prepared is ready, so she can try it a little. The night woman accepts his suggestions, and when she tries a little, she is fascinated. But the Demon King tells her that even though he is a very resistant crop because it grows in very harsh climates, you should be careful, because if the ones that begin to sprout receive sunlight, they will become poisonous. However, with proper care to harvest and store them, you should not have any problems. And in these cold places, you can store them for a year. The Demon King also tells her that if they get the optimal conditions, they will be able to harvest them 3 times a year, which means that they will get 3 times more than what they get with wheat. The director tells her that this would be fantastic to get rid of hunger, although she sadly reveals that if they seek financing, she will not be able to help them. But Ruby Eyes confess that she does not want their money because she only wants them to build a convent in the village so that they can guide the citizens in this new method of agriculture. The director assures her that this suits her perfectly. Objectives as a convent, to which the Demon King indicates that she would then like them to do the same in the nearby villages and nations to expand the method even further. Since if the cultivation of Solanum tuberosum becomes common, food situation will improve as much, which means that she will be a little closer to fulfilling her dream. The female knight, with a big smile and fascinated by the scholar, assures her that the convent will do everything possible to help her. She also confesses that they will personally go to the village to supervise everything. Then, the hero and Ruby's eyes walk through the town talking about the next objectives to be met. She tells him that they need at least 30,000 pieces of the icy southern sea per year to be able to keep the village lands fertile, which represents a problem and is due wondering. Because if they approach those lands, they must face the powerful Ice General, who is one of the most conflictive demons, because he is also one of the strongest, but still reveals that in reality, their biggest problem would be the economic alliance of free merchants and automaton citizens of the South, because they control 60% of the wheat market, which makes them so powerful that even if they wanted to, they can easily dethrone a king. The protagonist, upon hearing her, remembers that once those of the Alliance asked him to do some kind of propaganda, for which they paid her 15 gold coins. Upon discovering that they only paid her that, she tells him that it was very little for all the money that the Alliance has. She also reveals that they only used him for their own expansion purposes. So, now the time has come for them to take advantage of so much power. Ruby's eyes confess that because of that, she spent the last 2 months planning how to do it. Meanwhile, in the Alliance, we observed how a member of the Alliance presented a compass to his companions, who were fascinated for such an invention because they could get a lot of benefits from this. But the merchant who brought it tells them that they are actually in trouble because the person who gave it to them looked quite suspicious. His companions ask him who sent the valuable object, and he tells them that the sender is someone who calls herself the Crimson Scholar, who lives in the southern nations in the village of Winter's Pass. Upon hearing it, Olar and pray that the compass is not sold to another organization. The scene, and we move to the protagonist who at night is with the Demon King. She takes him to a hidden place to show him a special armor, which she wants him to use to put things in order in the demon world. But first she gives him a list of the leaders whom she considers trustworthy. So if he wants to go look for his former companion, the protagonist, grateful for her help, gives her a kiss on the forehead, and using his power of teleportation, he decides to quickly leave for the demon world. The next day, the Demon King prepares with the help of the eldest servant to attend to a meeting with a business partner. So due to the importance of said event, the eldest servant tells her servants to leave the Demon King very elegant. Meanwhile, the female knight is in charge of training the Demon King's students in the use of the sword. Although because of her strict attitude, she only causes terror in the apprentices. On the other hand, the merchants of the Alliance head to a carriage towards the Winter Pass village, where the eldest servant gives advice to the Demon King on how to act with the merchants, and also having the necessary concern, assures her that in the worst-case scenario, perhaps they will be lucky enough that the hero returns in time to help her in her task. But Ruby's eyes tell her that if the worst were to happen, they should only flee because they cannot depend on the hero. Later we discover that the merchants arrived at the village, and upon seeing the appearance of the scholar, they were fascinated by her beauty. She, in turn, confesses to them that the extravagant dress she is wearing is just a foolish attempt to improve her position in the world. Negotiation. That's why he apologizes if he makes them laugh. But the person in charge of the negotiation tells him that he is the one who should apologize for being late. Then she tells him that since she is a rookie, they should have made a lot of arrangements beforehand for such an important negotiation. Next, the Demon King takes her to a more private room to show what she has to offer. Although the merchants ask her what it is, because they have never seen a product like that, she tells them that it is a plant called corn, which is harvested annually, and its most notable attribute is that it can grow even if you provide it with little water. Although it does need approximately 30 grams to grow, she thinks it is a perfect plant for the desert lands of the central continent that are generally not very suitable for crops. Plant it in that entire area. And for that reason, the Demon King assures them that they are facing the biggest business that their eyes have ever seen. But he also warns them that they will need a lot of capital to start, although by doing so, they could carry out a harvest operation on a large scale which will provide them with a lot of money. And also, if there are villages that are established there, They would have to be part of a large market under the complete control of the Alliance, which means that they will have many new clients. The merchant, surprised by his words, she realizes that instead of selling a product, she is only trying to give a new idea to the Alliance. So he asks her if she is sure of delivering such a product, because once the Alliance obtains such knowledge, they will be able to move forward with the plan without her. And that is why he wants to know what her benefit will be. She answers him that she only wants a quick end to the war that does not imply a defeat or a victory, to which he exaltedly tells her that this is impossible, because the war will only end with the victory of the humans. Upon hearing his words, the Demon King asks him if the Alliance is not the greatest sponsor of the war against the demons. The merchant proudly tells him that the Alliance's duty is to support humanity in everything they can without tax. No matter what their enemy is, a signal is then given to your companion to alert the soldiers who are outside the house monitoring the meeting. But to their surprise, they do not expect that the eldest servant has also planted her own ghost spies in the surroundings to inform her of a possible attack. Meanwhile, the merchant tells Ruby's Eyes that he considers her dreams a betrayal of humanity and a blasphemy in the eyes of the church. Therefore, he asks her what made her think that the Alliance would help her. She replies that it is because they both earn something. Her words made the merchant burst out laughing, who tells his companion that the scholar is right, because before being human or devoted to the church, they are merchants. Finally, thanks to her reflection, the merchant ended up agreeing to make a contract that illuminates their changes towards the future. In the next scene, when the merchants were preparing to leave for their lands, they asked the scholar when they would be able to start growing corn. She apologized to him because there are still many experiments to do, although she thinks that next spring they will be ready, which seemed fantastic to him because it will give him time to strengthen his position in the Alliance. She then assures him that he will use the compass well to achieve it. Although before, he was a little nervous. He confesses that he wants to ask her to marry him, but she refuses because she is engaged to the hero. Just she decided not to reveal it to the merchant who, far from giving up, kisses her hand, promising that they will soon see each other again. The scene changes and we move to the southern lands, where the king's son tells the perverted old man about his Solanum tuberosum, and after telling him the wonderful benefits that this crop brought, he confesses that he would like to put an end to the war to expand to the same activities carried out by the convent. But he reminds him that, if the war ends, the aid with the fund of shipments from the Central Nations would end, which would lead his nation to ruins. Months later, we return to the Demon King, who is amazed to see all the papers that have been sent from the Alliance, and therefore, because she feels very tired, the older servant tells her that she must take care of all of Ruby's Eyes. When he hears this, she gets frustrated and changes the conversation to complain that she hasn't had any news about the hero for 6 months, although she reminds her that he did send him letters from all his adventures. However, the Demon King is not happy with that, and her servant reassures her that she should stay calm, as he is surely fine. Later we discover that in reality, the eldest servant knows that the hero frequently returns to the house, but he has decided hide so as not to be seen by the Demon King, since he thinks that she does not need him much, because instead of using her power, she only cares about him, so that he does not have to fight. The older servant tells him that he means a lot to the Demon King, and the protagonist confesses to her that he knows, although he also avoids her because he cannot imagine how she will feel if he were to die. So after receiving a new letter, she reminds him that they both belong to each other, which means that everything that belongs to them is theirs. Her, and even her feelings of doubt, fear. The scene changes and we see the son of the Demon King of the southern lands called Lone complaining about the new orders that the leaders of the Central Nations have sent cause many unnecessary casualties. Then several days later, the merchants talk about the war having broken out, and the sacred capital next to the church have created a plan to recover the Aurora Island. So the thief merchant who negotiated with the Demon King tells his companion that because of this, they have made many more compasses to use in the warships because thanks to the position of the Alliance, they are in charge of controlling the naval gunners of the Nation of the Tin. which implies that if they achieve a victory on Aurora Island, new trade routes will open to the west that will make the movement of merchandise cheaper compared to land transportation. He then tells you that in his jurisdiction, the southern nations increased their productivity, and for that reason, he doesn't want them to go bankrupt. Because they also asked him to provide a large quantity of herring from the icy South Sea, which is equivalent to at least 5 times more than what his partner can normally sell. When he hears this, he laughs that perhaps they are planning to create a palace with herrings, to which he tells him that in reality they told him that they have a spell that can turn it into wheat. Finally, he confesses to his partner that if instead of winning they were defeated, they would be in serious trouble, even if they received compensation for the war. Then, we move to the protagonist who entered a bar to save a young demon who was being harassed by a group of soldiers. And after managing to save her, the girl informs him that the soldiers he had scared away belong to the Crusade of the Holy Key, who are in charge to protect the city. The protagonist, upon hearing her, asks her, "Then what happens with the troops outside the city?" She tells him that they monitor the surroundings, divided into 4 armies that take turns to return to the city. So the hero asks her what is the difference between both forces, and the young woman tells him that when the soldiers return, they act violently, and they also tend to do horrible things, and also reveals to him that apparently those who stay in the city are usually of high rank, like children of kings or their relatives. He thinks, since they are nobles, they stay in the city, because it is a safe place to do whatever they want with the demons because they lost the war. She confesses that they live in a hell from which they cannot escape, to which he, very upset, win the wars. Or on the contrary, if the demons win, but suddenly the young woman reveals to him that the troops of the eastern fortress are not so violent, which implies that when a demon manages to flee, he always does so in that direction. The hero thanked her for the information she gave him. Although he confesses that it is not enough, that is why he begins to think what the Demon King would do later. In the company of the demon he has saved, he goes to an ancient sanctuary, where suddenly they hear an old demon cursing the humans for having destroyed their lives. The very nervous young woman asks the protagonist to excuse them, to which he with a smile assures her that she should not worry. On the other hand, we observe the human troops led by the Winter King advance through the ocean with great speed, until to their surprise they were attacked by sea monsters, and believing in being able to defend themselves, Winter King orders his people to shoot at the vital points of the monsters. But that was not enough, because even the flagship was knocked down. In the next scene we see, one reports the situation to the King of the White Knight, who scolds him for allowing Winter King to sacrifice himself so he can escape, and then assures him that his sacrifice does not atone for his failure. To which Lone tells him that his father has died doing what he believed was right. Therefore, giving him the responsibility for the defeat is a different matter, since he was incapable of planning what cost the lives of 6,000 soldiers. The king, being arrogant, tells him that he will take responsibility for everything, what he accuses him of. Although he wants to remind him that he has the Lakeside Convent and a scholar who gives him great wealth for his own benefit. So he believes that by involving the alliance, he is surely hoarding large sums of money for the war. Lone responds that it is true that they adopted a new cultivation method, to which the Demon King tells him that then he is being greedy by asking for more financial support. But upon hearing this, he believes that the time has come and reveals that from now on, he will be the king. The demon also informs him that before the winter ends, he will retake Aurora Island. He then leaves the room to ask his servant to contact the person who will be his commander for the battle. On the other hand, the female knight says goodbye of the Demon King who, before seeing her leave, stops her, because considering that she is the person who is closest to becoming his friend, he wants to confess that he lied to her all along, and then tells her that she is the Demon King, to which the woman knight reminds her that she is the director of the convent on the shore of the lake. Therefore, she has decided to accept his confession, which implies that now, wielding his sword, he informs her that her sins have been forgiven. The very surprised Demon King asks her if that is all. She tells her, yes, because her sin was just lying. Or is it that he actually considers that being the Demon King is a sin, to which Ruby's eyes assure her that it is not? Finally, the female knight says goodbye, remembering how the protagonist before leaving spoke to her about that. In reality, his companion was the Demon King. Although he assured her that she is a good person who will not cause problems, in the next scene we discover that the year has ended, and the Demon King, very sad in her bed, regrets that it has been a year since she has touched the hero. But suddenly, to her surprise, the hero appeared at her side, causing her to be very angry and ask him where he was wandering all year long. While he asks her to stop hitting him, he answers that he sent her his reports all the time, and she reproached him that in reality he should come to visit her. So the protagonist tells him that he was busy in the Portal City looking for a way to transport things to the northern fortress to try to stop all those who helped the extremists. The enraged Demon King tells him that he should have used his ultra-destructive force to solve that matter. He tells her that it is impossible, because in that city, everyone is still alive, fighting day after day to hold on to the slightest hope that exists. After complaining to each other about the jealousy of that they have met new people, the young people dance to the rhythm of the music of the New Year festival. And after a few minutes, the hero confesses to the Demon King that he feels better now that he saw her. Although the time has come to leave again to free the Portal City in the next scene we can see how the female knight arrived at the fortress, prepared by the new Winter King, Lone, who was waiting for her with his servant and her former companion. On the other hand, the hero returned to the Portal City to terrorize the soldiers who are there while he mocks that they are the most powerful army of humanity, and yet are trembling with fear? And after achieving his objective, we discover that the protagonist is receiving help from the fairies, who transform into floating skulls that help provoke more terror. Then he asks Mum Tsugumi to establish a cloister of nightmares in the headquarters of the Crusade of the Holy Key, so that every night he trembles with fear with them. Later we see how the commander wakes up complaining about the nightmares caused by the demons, and suddenly one of the soldiers interrupts his room to inform him that the Ghost Knight has returned. So he orders them to kill the Ghost Knight by sending the entire army if necessary. However, the soldier responds that no officer wants to face him because they fear the curse of the demons, and also tells him that everyone has submitted requests to return to their homes. The commander tells him to then hold them with alcohol and money, or, if that doesn't work, to offer them demon women, to which he tells him that not even that will change their minds. The next day we move to the fortress of the Winter King, where they inform Aon that the Crimson Scholar has arrived. The female knight, on hearing it, was as surprised as Lone and his servant that she had come to this place. The Demon King then reveals to them that he has come to help them win. Lone, upon hearing her, formally introduces himself to her, and then thanks her for having supported his nation's agriculture so much. After accepting his thanks, she asks him why he needs to recover Aurora Island. At that moment, he confesses that it is to recover his honor, and also by recovering the island, they will obtain new trade routes, which means stopping being slaves to the merchant companies of the center. Hearing that his motivations are correct, she reveals that then her gift will be of use to him. Then we can see that all of Winter King's men work together to place ice sheets in front of the fortress, because that way it will be easier for them to reach the Aurora Island. Meanwhile, the female knight Elone tell them how to do it correctly. From the top of the fortress, thanks to the fact that the Demon King brought them a large shipment of salt, since for her part she had only required them to wait one day before they carry out their plan, because she is not interested in victory. The next day we see that the Ice General is informed that the humans have managed to reach his island to unleash a land battle in which they are specialists. On the other hand, Female Knight guides the entire army towards the southern bay of the island, where plans to create a bridgehead to ensure a safe supply line. Then we watch as the soldiers gradually manage to push back the demons until suddenly a giant squid attacked them from the rear. So motivated to protect their king, they unleash a fierce battle against the monster and all the beast-type demons that have arrived. After several hours of combat, the female knight informs Winter King that the humans managed to place an outpost in enemy territory. However, she regrets that there were 500 casualties of allies, although he tells her that this could be considered a great success. But she confesses that she believes they have advanced as much as possible, because then they must go through many natural caves before reaching the impenetrable castle. The Demon King asks her how many enemy forces are left, and she cares. He answers that around 8,000 demons. Therefore, the Demon King tells him that, according to his knowledge, 3 times the number of enemy soldiers are needed to force the defeat of the enemy in his castle, and tells her that he only has 12,000 soldiers, which in reality is much less than triple. And suddenly, when the Demon King was going to explain her plan to defeat the demons, they are interrupted by a terrified soldier who informs them that a large army of at least 10,000 soldiers appeared through the portal that connects their world with the demons. Upon hearing this, the Demon King reassures everyone by telling them that they are the result of his plan, because they are soldiers who come from the Portal City. Meanwhile, we see how the officer who remained as commander in Portal City, after the original commander fled, he tells his aide-de-camp that from now on, they will be a city that collaborates with the demons and back to the battlefield on Aurora Island. We can see how the demons withdraw from the fortress of the Ice General. Therefore, the soldiers inform the Winter King that they are heading at full speed towards the portal, where the mysterious reinforcements of the Crimson Scholar are located. Upon hearing this, the king believes that his opportunity to advance has arrived. The female knight, for her part, tells him that if that army belongs to the Crusade of the Holy Key, will have the best equipment that exists. But suddenly the protagonist appears to them in the middle of the meeting, assuring them that in reality, those from the Crusade of the Holy Key are good for nothing, and then reveals to them that to synchronize this situation, he did everything possible to delay the human army, which caused them to perhaps be very tired. Then a soldier interrupts them to report that a huge demon is heading towards their position after completely destroying a squadron of light infantry. The female knight orders him to tell everyone to retreat because they will not be able to fight against him. And then she goes to take care of the problem herself. Therefore, after a difficult battle, the general of the human army defeated the enemy leader, causing great happiness in all the soldiers who were observed by the protagonist. And the Demon King from above several days later, the Winter King held a great party with all his soldiers as a reward for having recovered Aurora Island. And there in front of everyone he granted an honorary title of nobility to the 2 people who helped him the most, the female knight and the Crimson Scholar. Then a few months later, we can see that the protagonist trains with the female knight, who complains about him being able to teleport during combat. But the hero reminds her that there are no such things on the battlefield as tricks or protests. That's why she demands that he attack with everything he has. She is very angry that he is treating her like a girl. She guesses his next move and manages to capture him to threaten him with her weapon, to which he smiles because her friend has improved much later. Later, after taking a bath using the water pump that the Demon King invented, both share a pleasant moment next to the greenhouse. The protagonist, taking advantage of the moment, begins to talk about the future actions they should take with the issue of war, which at this moment is paralyzed. She responds that even though it is still paralyzed, they do not know for sure how long it will be. To which he, remembering the words of the Demon King, tells her that even if the war ends, it does not mean that everyone will be at peace, and she tries to save both humans and demons. Finally, the protagonist confesses that because of that, he considers her an incredible person. His words saddened the female knight because he believes that she is someone terrible. But when he realizes, he quickly raises her spirits, saying that he also considers her someone incredible, because she is capable of fighting demons or commanding an entire army easily. In the next scene, we see the Demon King combing the protagonist's hair, while reminding him that the next day he must return to the Portal City to meet with the council, so he asks him to return immediately at the end of the meeting, for the Dragon Archduke catches him. He tells him that they have collaborated a lot with the Archduke, especially since his daughter has become a member of the council as a representative of the demons of the area. Upon hearing him, she murmurs that this is the reason for his warning, and then orders him again to to return immediately. The end of the meeting. But the hero tells her that he will not be able to do so, because after the meeting there will be a festival in the city, proposed by the commander of the Eastern Fortress himself. Since he wants to carry out a cultural exchange between human merchants and demons, to try to reduce the tension that exists. Later, we see the protagonist meeting with the commander of the Eastern Fortress, with whom you enjoy a good meal accompanied by cold beer. However, suddenly the Archduke's daughter arrives at the place and scolds the protagonist, whom she considers her husband. He tells her that she is wrong, because no one asked him if he agreed to that proposal, although she, ignoring what he says, suddenly gives him a hug. On the other hand, in the Winter Village, everyone is scared when they perceive an earthquake that causes great damage to their homes. The Demon King, for his part, complains to the elder maid that it is the second time it has happened in the month, and she responds that then they should hurry up their plans. Upon hearing her, the Demon King confesses to being surprised that this has taken 2 years to happen. For that reason, she orders her to send her bed. To the palace of the underworld, the scene changes, and now we see that the Demon King used the protagonist to teleport to the top of a mountain to observe the Iron Nation from afar. She tells her servant that here they have ready the prototype of the device that he ordered from them. Protagonist, on the other hand, asks the Demon King why he brought the servant here. The Demon King reveals to him that lately he has taught her several things that he is working on, as she is very talented. Then she took them to the blacksmith in charge of making them the piece he needed, and they were guided to a huge room where he keeps what he has been making. When they arrive, both the maid and the protagonist are surprised to see the size of what the Demon King needs. Shu, for her part, with the blacksmith, tells them that the machine is called the printing press. Later, upon returning to the village, the hero observes in surprise a letter created from the printing press and thinks it is fascinating that they can make thousands of those a day. But after falling asleep, he must wake up again, because both the woman knight and the Demon King burst into his room. They begin to argue about who will accompany him in his bed, and after a moment trying to agree, they decide that they will both sleep next to the protagonist during the night. When they believed that the hero had slept with the Demon King, tells her friend that she will soon have to return to the underworld to renew her license as a Demon King. So if she is lucky, she hopes it will only be for a few months, because to achieve it, she must visit the sepulchre of the previous kings, and if she does not unite the hearts of the demons, some clan could lose control, and clearly that would start a new war, because the majority of clans support the idea of invading the human world. The female knight, worried about her, mends that she takes someone to protect her, and the Demon King reveals to her that's Twixt. The older maid will accompany her, and finally confesses that that was the reason she wanted to share a moment with the protagonist, because she will not have his warmth for a long time. And she also took advantage of the moment to inform him that she has left instructions on what she needs to do in hands of her servant. The next day we observed that she teleported the Demon King and the eldest servant to the demon world, where they said goodbye kindly, promising that they would see each other again a few weeks later. We observed that the merchant in love with the scholar visited her in his home, but she does not know that he is not with his lover, since the Demon King before leaving left a special ring for his servant, so that she can transform into her when necessary. The merchant then confesses that all this time she has missed her too much, and that is why he could not avoid visiting her. But suddenly he suggests that she get a makeover, because after the recovery of La Isla Aurora, as well as the circulation of goods along that route, counterfeiters have increased. However, he reveals to her that only anyone would be fooled by hearing her. She begins to get nervous, but for her peace of mind, the protagonist interrupted the meeting, telling his servant that she can leave now because the merchant has already discovered them, and then he took the ring from her, leaving the merchant very surprised, who tells them to understand their situation, because appearances are very important in negotiations. Later, the hero takes charge of the meeting, and there he discovers that the merchant still remembers the last time they saw each other, when he hired him for propaganda for only 15 coins. Ed the hero. He reminds him that he is still in debt to the party full of women that he promised him if he returned from the battlefield. So he quickly teleports him to take him to a mountain near the portal city in the world of demons, where for some reason, the rainbows descend at night. There, the hero confesses to the merchant that he has already made the preparations for them to throw a great party. He, for his part, very surprised, worries that there have been arrived in the world of demons. But after thinking about it for a moment, he realizes that the Crimson Scholar is a demon. And when he asks the protagonist, he receives confirmation of his hypothesis. The hero then reveals that the city was completely controlled by the soldiers. He took him to a nearby bar. There he tells him that after what happened with the old commander, it is now a city shared between humans and demons. Therefore, it is the only place in the world where both races coexist without problems. He also tells him that even the Demon King considers it a neutral zone, since the city council operates autonomously. The hero tells him that a third of it is made up of humans, where he, for his part, represents the demons instead of the scholar. Upon hearing this, the merchant warns him that he could be in danger, to which the protagonist tells him that maybe he is. Just that lately he had felt very alone, and after returning to the mountain, where they will have their party, suddenly, the daughter of the Dragon Archduke arrived at the place to tell the protagonist that they came to his called to give an unforgettable party to his guest. In the next scene, we see how the Archduke's daughter kept her word and prepared a great celebration in honor of the merchant. Later, the hero, taking advantage of a moment of relaxation with his guest, asks him what he thinks of Portal City. He confesses that it is like a gold mine. Upon hearing this, the protagonist tells him that then he will sell it to him in the name of his position. And in exchange, he only wants him to show him that the merchants are not just greedy monsters. On the other hand, we move to the Demon King, who with the eldest servant goes to visit the crypts of the previous kings, who are very upset because even the mana of the place became cloudy. And for that reason, Ruby's Eyes order her servant that if when she leaves the place, she stops being herself, she must defeat her even if she loses her own life. The next day, we return to the human world where, surprisingly, the female knight decided to offer her sword to the protagonist, who assures her that it is not necessary, but she insists that he become its owner, because if not, she will never be a complete knight, because she never offered her sword to anyone. And also through tears he confesses that if he heads to the future with the Demon King, she wants a place at his side, since she never wants to be left again, decides to accept her proposal and fulfill her wishes, because he considers that the scene is very important to her. And we observe that a messenger arrived to the lands of Winter King to indicate that by orders of the bishop, he must mobilize his army immediately, because otherwise, if they let the Crimson Scholar escape, he will not be able to free himself from the slander of betraying their religion. Meanwhile, in the convent of the Night Woman, the sisters are very worried. Does something terrible happen? So they try rushing to communicate with her. We see that both Winter King, Lone, and his most faithful people decide to sneak out at night to visit the protagonist, kindly receives them in his home. Though now the old pervert reveals to him that religion has decided that Crimson Scholar is a heretic due to the Solanum tuberosum that she introduced into local agriculture. He reveals to them that the bishop considers the cultivation method that the scholar taught everyone to be a heresy that goes against the teachings of the Spirit of Light. Upon hearing this, the female knight is upset because they are using the name of the Spirit of Light for shady business. The protagonist, for his part, tells them that they cannot hand over the scholar because she will return in at least 2 months, and that was the reason why. He left a special ring, so after thinking about it for a moment, the protagonist tells his servant that she should allow herself to be trapped using the ring, since as soon as she leaves the nation of Winter, he will quickly save her. Tells Winter King that once the transfer Hershmore, if the prisoner is outside of her nation, they will not be able to blame her for anything. However, it does imply that he opposes the church again. The woman knight and the old pervert oppose her idea, because it means that they will leave him alone again. Although the hero, he reassures by saying that he is used to escaping at night, and also this time he will not be alone. because he will have two people by his side who will accompany him. Several days later, we discover that the merchants also echoed about the conflict that is approaching, because the church wants to kill the Crimson Scholar. So the merchant in love with the scholar decides that the time has come to form a new council of 10 within the alliance. To do this, they need the diplomat of the Ice Nation to help them. Since being originally from the nation of bards, he thinks that he is the most appropriate person to stop the activity of the current Council of 10. In addition to the fact that he will surely be able to obtain important information, the diplomat of the Ice Nation tells him that he will be in charge of meeting his expectations because this will also benefit his teacher, Crimson Scholar. However, she confesses that her only skills are spreading rumors and dancing, although that does not worry him, because he is sure that he will not die within the council. With bewilderment on his face, later we can see the inhabitants of the protagonist's village complain to the soldiers sent by the church that they are very wrong and consider the Crimson Scholar heretic. Protagonist, for his part, observes them from the top of a tower and then returns to his companions to inform them about the commotion in the square, since some consider the scholar a goddess. The servant, upon hearing it, assures her that this is true, because every time her sister or she walks along the roads of the village, everyone greets her with a big smile, because they are so happy with the help the scholar gave them. And suddenly they are interrupted by the loud ringing of the bell, which indicates that the time has come to proceed with their plan. The female knight, for her part, confesses to the protagonist that since she is the director of the convent on the shore of the lake, it is unpleasant to have to listen to the words of any messenger. Finally, before leaving, she approaches the servant to reassure her by saying that there is nothing to fear since the hero will save her. In the next scene, we see the arrival of the messenger of the church, escorted by a large army. Therefore, Lone must do the same and act like a king in front of all the furious villagers who hate the messenger for treating the scholar as a heretic. He tries to calm everyone down by telling them that he is honored for his presence. Although to his surprise, the messenger quickly interrupts him to remind him that he had to bring the scholar, so Lone assures him that he has fulfilled his part of the deal and gives the order to bring the Crimson Scholar. The messenger, seeing her, tells him. He orders his subject to verify if it is the true DJ, and after verifying it, he gives the order to arrest her. Then, he heads towards the town and warns them that if they side with the servant of demons, the same fate awaits them. And suddenly, to everyone's surprise, in order to demonstrate his power, he tells his subordinates to whip the Crimson Scholar before taking her to the capital. The Winter King, faced with this situation, decides to intervene, although the old pervert stops him, begging him to resist a little longer while he laments that an innocent young woman has to go through this on her own. The messenger, upon seeing the scholar's defiant look, gives her permission to speak before the people so that she can try to defend herself. She stands in front of everyone and, accompanied by a sad look, decides to tell her true story. Story revealing that she was born as a servant, as she is the third of 7 siblings. Later she tells them that as she grew up, her siblings lost their lives in different situations of injustice caused by their masters. However, after her younger brother died, because of smallpox, she decided to run away with her little sister in search of a better future. And luckily for her, one day they found an opportunity that changed their lives. Therefore, she thinks that fate has been very kind to her. But still she thinks she should reject it, because it was very kind to her since she is human. And just like many, she confesses that she does not have confidence in herself. Finally, she asks them if they have ever been accused of being simple insects that do not become human. And then she tells them that no matter how much they have been told, they have to declare that they are human, since it is the first step to suddenly call themselves that way. The messenger, upon hearing her, stops her with a strong blow to the head. The scholar, after receiving the blow, tells him no. It does not matter if she is a heretic or not, because as a human who has received a blessing, she will speak to her companions. She then asks the entire village to never stop wanting to have hope, think, and work, because the spirit of light will bring that miracle with it that they have waited so long for, and will also be accompanied by riches, or the freedom to be good people. just as it happened in this village, because the Spirit of Light did not make them perfect, since instead it gave them freedom, so that they can strive day by day to obtain their own happiness. So they should never give it up to make their lives easier. The scholar tells them that no one has the power to take away what they have been given, because neither the king nor the church have rights over them. The messenger, for his part, he hits her again, demanding that she remain silent, although she confronts him again, assuring him that she will never again abandon the treasure of being a human. So he, very angry with the situation, orders the people to throw stones at the heretic, or else they will be enemies of the church. But since no one dared to do it, the scholar tells them that if they have the desire to throw stones, they have to do it because she will not blame them. Although if they do it, because someone ordered them to do so, the people will consider them insects. When they hear their words, motivating words, begin to throw stones towards the messenger of the church and his soldiers, causing him to order Winter King to arrest them all. But Lone refuses to intercede in the situation. When he sees that he has been left alone, the messenger ordered his guard to cut off the heretic's head. Only before he achieved it, the king stopped him, and then Lone reveals to the messenger that as of today, he has freed himself from the dirty chains of the central nations that tied him. He also says he feels ashamed that it took so long. Realizing this, the female knight, for her part, scolds the messenger, because as a servant of the Spirit of Light, she is ashamed of her sinful behavior. Finally, Winter King, before all the villagers, declares that the nation of Winter will officially provide protection to the Crimson Scholar, and the woman knight quickly declared her to be a saint. The villagers, upon hearing them, begin to celebrate that they had saved the scholar and, very angry, they demand that the messenger of the church return to his nation. Before leaving, he tells the king, after disobeying the church in the center, not to even think they can exist in this world. In the next scene, we see that a few days have passed, and the Winter King gathered his council. He apologizes for the speech he gave in front of the people because that made him turn against the center nations. But he also tells them that his speech has caused collateral damage to the people because many nations are now demanding independence. So he asks them for advice on how the royal family should act. One of the members tells him that he has no choice but to free the servants to show support for the people. He tells him that they certainly could, because thanks to Solanum tuberosum, they can feed twice as many people. Although another of his members tells him that that would be an act of rebellion direct with the nations of the center. And that means that if a war starts, they could easily finish them off. Upon hearing this, the young subject of the king tells him that he doubts that they will attack them immediately, since if they do, they would lose the shield that protects them from the demons, that if they want to focus their military forces, it will take them at least 6 months. The protagonist, very upset, interrupts them because now he does not understand what is happening, because he does not understand what the objective of the Central Nations is. The woman knight tells him that Cress, they want to unite everyone under the name of the Spirit of Light. And as much as that sounds good, in reality, their true purpose is to monopolize all the wealth. One of the members decides to add that they also want to form a closed system of hierarchies, where some with more power, they will exploit the rest. So the woman knight believes that the church keeps the people in ruin to get rich. The protagonist, overwhelmed by uncertainty, asks them what they should do to go in the right direction. In the next scene, we see the merchant friend of the protagonist is told that the convent on the shore of the lake built a church separate from the one in the center, and they tell him that they decided to call it the Authentic Church of the Holy Spirit of Light. This implies that they have created a new religion. When he hears it, he thinks that, perhaps Mike, this was an idea from his friend the hero, which makes him happy because it was quite brilliant. Later, his servant reveals to him that due to this situation, the Supreme Council of the downtown church is in great chaos, although that is not what worries him the most. And then he gives him a paper where the merchant discovers that the southern nations are planning to free their servant. However, what attracts his attention the most is the high quality of the paper on which the message was written, since apparently the letters are printed But suddenly he remembers that the scholar told him about a printing material that would replace the parchment, and he is happy that his plans have finally borne fruit. He then leaves with his servant, from whom he asks for information about what the rest of the members of the council think of this conflict. He tells him that 3 are with the bishop, and 2 are with the 3 southern nations, while the rest decided to remain neutral. So thinking about business, the merchant reveals that they are going to buy all kinds of materials: iron, carbon, silver, and even wheat. Although he asks you to do it without raising suspicions, and for this he recommends buying the wheat for 100 points. In the next week, next month, he should buy it for 250, so that in the end, they fill an entire room with wheat for a few pointer. Days later, the merchant asks his subject how the merchant responded with his purchases. He informs him that both nobles and merchants respond well, since they have a lot of wheat in their hands, to the point where some even begin to liquidate it. However, some farm owners have become more cautious. Although they do not refuse to sell if they are offered enough money, therefore the merchant confesses that everything is going according to his plan, and then shows him his new idea, which he called agreements for the purchase of goods, which means that he will buy the wheat from the landowners in advance. Since in case the price of wheat rises next summer due to a bad harvest, they will continue to get it for almost nothing. His subject asks him if he trusts that the price will rise, and he tells him that with the nations of the center accusing those of the south of being heretics, surely a war will be fought, but in the event that said war does not arise with the large amount of wheat accumulated, they will be able to create an artificial shortage so that prices do not fall, allowing the alliance to become rich. At the cost of the fear of the rest, he then reveals that to prepare for what is coming, he has thought about changing the headquarters of the alliance to a place near the Lake Nation, because they could take advantage of the convent that is located there. Next, we move to the Archduke Dragon, who is informed that the city's salt reserves have been exhausted. So he regrets having lost the supply from Aurora Island. But suddenly his daughter interrupts him to ask him to stop complaining, since the commander of the Fortress of the East is on the side of the humans, and then asks the commander if he knows the Blue Demons, only to discover that he does not know much. She tells him that they are a great clan that has given more demon kings than any other. But the most disturbing fact, it is precisely that clan that is the most obsessed, conquering the human world, and because of this, she is worried about a rumor that she heard. She, a little upset, reveals that it is said that the Blue Demons are contacting the humans of Portal City, to which he assured her that he does not know anything about that. In the next scene, several days have passed and we return to the merchant, who is informed that the price of wheat began to rise to its normal price. Therefore, he asks his subject to concentrate on quickly negotiate the wheat cession agreements with the largest landowners, and then warns him that surely the members who support the bishop are going to oppose continuing buying wheat. For that reason, they must use the Black Hands to keep them on the sidelines for at least 2 weeks. On the other hand, Winter King is alerted about the unusual rise in wheat grain prices in the capital. The Demon King's former apprentice warns him that there is someone behind all this, and that means that in the capital, they will see a resounding rise in prices like never have seen. It means that the nobles or landowners with a lot of money come to buy the resources in the southern nations. So very worried, he tells him that this situation will destroy the economy of his nation. To which Lone asks him if there is anything they can do to avoid it. He tells him that they will use tariffs to restrict the departure of inputs from the 3 nations of the south, especially that of wheat, which will involve a tax of 10 gold coins on the cars that try to leave. One of the king's servants questions him that this tax is absurdly high, and he tells him that without the tax, those in the center will take all their food. The scene changes and we see that the merchant met with the daughter of the Dragon Archduke because she needs to ask him for a favor. She reveals that she has come to look for large quantities of salt, because he is the only one capable of satisfying her request. However, since it is a very valuable product in the world of dragons, he asks him to give him something on loan. Remembering his brief conversation with the hero in the demon world, tells him that perhaps she will take him to what he is looking for. Later we move to Winter King, who tells the protagonist that the official declaration of war has reached them, and at the same time the church sent them a letter of excommunication. Due to the tax they imposed on wheat, they have not been able to buy the amount of grains that they had. The annoying protagonist complains that everything has happened very quickly. Although now he wants to know when the war will start, the old pervert answers him that it will be the first month of winter on the 4th day over the fields of the north, to which he thinks that it will be in 10 days. For this reason, frustrated, he confesses to them that he does not want to fight, because it is not what the scholar would have wanted. And then he consults to the Winter King. How long can they hold out without suffering losses from marauding? None of the sides. He responds that depending on the weather, maybe 4 weeks, because if they hold out for 2 weeks, it is most likely that it will start to snow. Upon hearing this, the protagonist asks him to take care of. So be it, as he promises to try. Then we head to the Alliance offices, where the merchant continues instructing his subjects to buy different materials. But suddenly his servant tells him that he has an emergency, because the holy capital supported by Gu, the church, plans to mint gold coins again. He reveals that this means that 28 current coins would be equivalent to 10 of the new one. Furthermore, they want to prohibit both the use and possession of the old coin, which will increase inflation rates. The merchant, after listening to the news, explains to the Dragon Princess that this implies that they will replace 10,000 gold pieces of the old currency with 5,000 of the new. Meanwhile, in the northern fields, the enemy army of the Winter King has been able to gather a large number of men. And watching Winter King is having a hard time gathering his people. The leader decides to relax by eating and drinking until something exciting happens on the other side. The King of the White Knight, reunited with the former commander of the Eastern Fortress, plans to make a surprise attack on the Nation of Iron, taking advantage of the fact that they are attentive to the punitive forces. In the next scene, we move next to the protagonist, who is meeting with the king, who orders his general to adopt a defensive formation in the war to wait for the Snowmano. Female knight, when she hears him, she confesses to being worried about the number of men that the Central Nations will send, because she believes there will be around 20,000. The king tells her that it is worrying, because they only have 4,500 soldiers at most. She thinks they have no choice but to wait and see what their enemies decide to do. And suddenly a soldier interrupts the meeting to report that he brings a message from the Icy Sea of South, in which they were warned that at least 500 demons are approaching the fortress. Upon hearing it, the protagonist assures the Winter King that he will manage to take care of them, although he confesses that he does not want to fight the demons either. Lone, surprised by his words, warns him that they should still avoid fighting on 2 fronts at all costs. The protagonist thanks him for understanding his position. Later, we see that the merchant met with the Demon King's Minister of Economy because he wants to negotiate with him. Therefore, he tells him that there are 4 main points that he wants to discuss. The first is the movements of goods in the 3 southern nations, because he would like the alliance to have a special exception to the tax, so that it only applies in Biskrolith. In the event that goods enter, because in this way it will not affect trade in its economic sphere. Secondly, he wants to negotiate the lease of Aurora Island, specifically a part of the island only in Trexexnangs. This case is representing another group that is not relevant. Now, so the third issue to discuss is whether they are informed that there is a partnership of banks in the alliance, because you need their permission to establish banks and other agencies within of the southern capitals. Finally, the fourth issue is that the alliance is prepared to buy all its reserves of Solanum tuberosum. Upon hearing this, the Minister of Economy reminds him that said cultivation was declared a sacrilege. Although the merchant tells him that he does not care about that, which leaves the minister very thoughtful. Later we return to the protagonist, who, upon arriving the icy southern sea, discovers that the demons that threaten them are the blue demons. And since he does not want to fight them, he decides to destroy the supplies they are carrying to force them to retreat. But to his surprise, he suddenly heard a familiar voice. And when he turned around, he was shocked to see the magician woman. The scene changed, and we observed how the Demon King finally managed to leave the crypt of the ancient kings. When the older servant saw her, She became worried about her, because she is pretending to be the same Ruby Eyes from always. But suddenly the Demon King reveals to her that she is thirsty for blood, and because of that, the older servant decides to fight her mistress because she wants to get the old Ruby Eyes back. However, no matter how hard she tried, the Demon King cut off her arm, demonstrating her most perverse side. Next, we went to the hero who was amazed to discover that the magician woman knows the Demon King. Shun, for her part, decides to establish a communication channel between them and then asks her to go in search of the Demon King while she takes care of the blue demons, but also orders him that when she tells him that she took care of the blue demons, she must destroy the teleportation portal. Worried, he reminds her that this will cause that no one can go to the demon world, to which she assures him that everything will be fine. She also asks him to hurry because Ruby's eyes need it. Meanwhile, back with the Minister of Economy, we see how they have discovered the merchant's true plan, Asians with the demons, and then reveals that his companion is the Princess of Portal City. We then return to the magician woman, who uses all her strength to teleportal the blue demons at the same time, and after achieving this, she orders the protagonist to destroy the teleportation portal. And after the hero achieves its Haskshim to cross the large cloud of smoke that the protagonist has created, trusting in her words, crosses the cloud of smoke, and discovers that he has reached the world of demons. So now the magician woman reveals to him that the world of demons is not a separate world, but rather has always been underground, and then warns him to be careful with Ruby Eyes, because he is about to become the king of evil. He also tells him that he must find her in the Demon King's castle, which is the lowest level. Meanwhile, we see that, in the Demon King's castle, eldest servant tries to recover her former mistress by appealing to her feelings, but the Demon King, completely ignoring her, attacks her. In this situation, the servant decides to lock her back in the crypt to buy some time, and suddenly, for her surprise, the hero burst into the room, causing the Demon King to attack him. The scene changes and we see that in the human world, the wizard woman appeared before the Winter King to deliver a message from the Crimson Scholar. She then showed him a scroll in which credit, "There is the cure for smallpox, a disease that constantly plagues the kingdom." The king, surprised by such a discovery, believes that he can use this to try a truce. But suddenly the wizard woman tells him that she also wanted them to report that the cure was delivered by demons, because that would help mediate their relations between demons and humans. But was next to the king assures him that it will be a good idea, because deep down they are not so different from humans, and for that reason he begs him to at least consider the proposal. Later we move to their own nation, where the servants, Isters of the Demon King, use the printing press that their mistress has left them, and are suddenly interrupted by the ancient commander of the Eastern Fortress, who, after losing the war, decided to infiltrate in the enemy kingdom with the aim of assassinating the Crimson Scholar. Meanwhile, in the underworld, the hero continues trying to make Ruby Eyes regain his sanity. However, he is not able to succeed because the Demon King is still possessed by the old kings. So, she decides to hug Ruby's eyes while she reminds her of the promise they made, and asks her that, no matter how much someone takes over her body, she must not forget that she is the most important thing he has in the world. Upon hearing this, the Demon King asks him to stop saying stupid thing. Although suddenly, thanks to his words, the hero manages to recover Ruby's eyes, who apologizes for making him wait so long, and back to the human world. We see that the ancient commander captured the young servant to force her sister to apologize to the Spirit of Light, since he thinks she is the scholar. But although the servant followed his orders, he still hit her, because he wants to force her to confess all her sins. But just before murdering the servant, he was stopped by a soldier. The scene changes, and we see that the protagonist managed to heal the older servant's arm thanks to the help of Ruby's eyes. Although then, he begins to tell her everything that is happening in the human world. On the other hand, we observe the female knight commanding a small group of men to take care of the mercenaries of the enemy army who have tried to attack by surprise. Finally, after managing to mislead the mercenaries, she orders her men to separate into several groups to confuse the enemy. Later we see that both she and her men meet at a key point to check that there are no casualties. And after discovering that there are only wounded, he orders them to regroup to attack again. However, he tells them that this time they must make the enemy soldiers fall off their horses, because there is no intention of killing them. But suddenly it begins to snow, and the female knight tells her men that the best reinforcement they could have arrived. A few weeks later, we discover that the nobles of the central nations are very upset with the blue demons because they were not able to cross the snow. And suddenly the bishop arrived at the place to report that everything that has happened is the fault of the alliance. On the other hand, the bishop's right hand tells the leader of the blue demons that when they achieve their objective, they will hand him over the southern nations as they promised him, thanks his nobility, and promises that in return he will forever appear to be the enemy of the church. It's that way they will be able to continue ruling. So after confirming his loyalty, the bishop tells his superior that to ensure victory, he will send a third crusade of the Holy Key, with which he plans to crush the southern nations. And he also assures him that after doing so, they will be able to capture the portal city and even kill the demon king, to which he tells them that he will then do everything possible so that everyone is under power of the church. Then we move to the world of demons, where we see the demon king being applauded by many people. The protagonist, for his part, tells the older servant that apparently her mistress has become very popular, which she tells him that in this world, to earn the respect of the people, you must be someone very strong. The demon king, on the other hand, decides to speak in front of all his people to show them that she is returned, and then confesses to them that she is proud that they have been able to retake the portal city in her absence, since from this day said city will be under his control and protection. She also tells them that those who have rebelled against him or have broken the laws will be judged by her loyal commander, the Black Knight, the hero. Upon hearing her words, stands next to her and performs a spectacular demonstration of power by destroying a distant mountain with a single shot, thus earning the respect of all the demons. Finally, the Demon King tells everyone that after being in contact with humans for 20 years, they are at a crossroads in her story, so she has decided to call a meeting of the great races. When the demons hear her, they believe that the time has finally come to wage a great war against humans. But she, worried when she hears them, tells them that they are making a mistake, because in the Curate in reality, all the decisions will be made by the heads of the great clans. A few days later, we see that Ruby's eyes have returned to their work in the human world, where they discover that Solanum tuberosum has sold very well through the alliance. For that reason, her servant tells her that thanks to this dissemination, everyone will know that it is not actually a demonic fruit, and perhaps several nations will direct their support to the nations of South. The Demon King, proud of how things are going, reveals to her that it is the first step towards a double currency system, and for a more mature economy. The servant responds that this is fascinating, although not as fascinating as the words of the merchant or the Winter King when he requested an immediate truce with the demons because he wanted to trade with them. And although the king did not give him an answer at the time, at least he got him to begin to be interested in demons. Later, the Demon King met with the female knight who told him about how she gave her sword to the protagonist. And after a brief conversation, they both decided to do a truce to not give up her love for the protagonist because the two consider the other a friend.